Thank you all for joining us. The Columbian is happy to welcome candidates for state senator from the 49th District. Pleased to welcome Justin Forsman and Vaughn Henderson and Annette Cleveland. Hopefully the other candidate, Louis Gerhardt, will join us before too long, but we'll go ahead and get started for now. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor here, and I believe you met the other board members. Lauren Dake is a reporter, will be sitting in on this, won't be asking questions in this form, but might want to speak to you afterwards, so keep that in mind. And as you should know, we are videotaping this for use on our website. We post all of our editorial board meetings unedited for the benefit of our readers. So we will get started. We'll start with introductions. Take just 1 to 2 minutes to give us a little background about yourself and explain why you are running for this position, and then we'll move on to more specific topics after that. And we'll start with Justin.
Okay. Hi, Clark County residents, and thank you, Columbian, for your time. I decided to run for city council because, or not city council, this is a new stage, 49th District Senate, because I care about our community and I'm tired of watching the government take advantage of its citizens. And it seems like every more we look around, we see that taxes are getting higher, we see that our rights are being more restricted, more restrictions on property, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the higher-ups, you know, weather and water and food related. And I think it's very important that we have somebody that's strong, that's got a lot of integrity, that's honorable, and basically we need leaders now with lots of aggression, who's not afraid to step outside the box, to do what needs to be done, to go against the establishment if need be, to not make friends with the politicians. I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to help the people and their benefit, not the state, the people. So that's me, and I thank you.
Thank you. Vaughn?
I came from a very political household, starting with the 2000 election. My parents were very active in that, and so it was just something I delved into. Got into activism when I was 10. Won the Vancouver Sparkles Award in 2006, and ever since I've been joining protesters and just fighting for what the people want. And so I decided to bring that on in the state senate and see what I could do to change the face of politics.
Can I ask a quick question? What's the Vancouver Sparkles?
It's an award for like environmental achievement.
Oh.
I cleaned up 116 pounds of garbage from marshes in the community, so
Fantastic. Thank you.
got that when I was 10.
Thank you. And Annette?
Great. First, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Appreciate it. And it's been my privilege to serve as state senator representing the 49th Legislative District for these past 4 years. And I'll share a little bit with you about my background. As most of you here well know, I started my career at the Columbian newspaper, and I have actually over 30 years of private and public sector work experience. And in addition to my work at the Columbian, I served 12 years as a congressional staff person to 2 different United States senators. Also worked in public affairs for the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, and served the American Cancer Society as their government affairs director, and also in my current position oversee all of our federal health policy work for Legacy Health, and I've worked in that position now for 11 years. But I think more importantly, what I bring to my work in Olympia is also my perspective as a daughter, as a wife, as a working mom, juggling everyday priorities and responsibilities like we all do. And I feel that I've worked very hard these past 4 years to be a true champion for this community, and I believe that my record reflects that.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to some specific topics. One of the big issues facing the legislature is school funding. How are we going to pay for that? And how can the state meet the McCleary mandate? And will we need to raise taxes to do that? And we'll start with Vaughn.
Okay. Well, what I've been discussing with some of the other state legislature candidates in the area is moving to a more regressive tax system. Instead of doing sales, doing an income tax, so that the top income earners can put a little more into it than the low income workers. And it's gotten some support from fellow candidates in the 49th, as well as some of the candidates in the 17th and 18th in the surrounding area. And that can increase tax revenue, which can then fully fund all the different education boundaries, whether it be arts or STEM or...
So would you prefer to completely doing away with the sales tax and replacing it entirely
Yeah,
with
replacing
income
it
tax?
with income. And we'll test out the numbers, obviously. Don't have anything set in stone.
What would be the advantage of that over a sales tax?
Well, when you think about it, if you give like $50 to somebody who makes pretty low money, they're going to spend all that. And much of it will come in sales tax too. So, but when a more wealthy person gets the $50, they're not necessarily going to spend it in the economy. They might invest it and it might go elsewhere. So if you allow the people to be able to spend their money without as many taxes being taken out of it through sales and have less through an income, then the more wealthy people will have to pay a little bit more into it and then ultimately lift everyone on the bottom up too.
Annette, how should we deal with McCleary?
Well, if there were an easy answer, we would have dealt with it by now. But as you well know, this is extremely complex. And the good news is that in the last 4 years in the legislature, obviously the McCleary decision was handed down by the Supreme Court in 2012. There's been a great deal of work and progress made on this issue. There's agreement in Olympia, I think, from all corners, that what we need in order to adequately solve this problem and meet the letter of the McCleary decision is $3.5 billion additional dollars per biennium put toward education. Now, where the disagreement still remains, of course, is where is that $3.5 billion going to come from? What will be the various different revenue sources? And so that's the work that remains to be done in the next session in 2017. I don't personally see a way forward without some form of new revenue. First and foremost, of course, we look at all other tools that are available to try to come up with that revenue that's needed. New taxes are always, I think, a last resort. But in looking at the last 30 years, the state of Washington actually has seen a rapid decline in taxation, the rates of taxation relative to personal income. And in 1996, for example, that level had been roughly 7%. It's now less than 5%. And if we were to if we were to just go back to the national taxation average relative to personal income, that in and of itself would mean an additional $3.4 billion per year for the state of Washington. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're going to be able to do that, but what I have been a supporter of is a capital gains tax on just the top 7,500 wealthiest citizens in the state of Washington. And in fact, I put my name to a proposal that the Senate Democrats put forward last year. That was in the form of a bill. It was Senate Bill 6102. And I think that that'll be a proposal that's going to be continued to be discussed in Olympia. The Senate Republicans last year put forward just a simple, straight across the board property tax increase. I am not as enamored with that proposal because I think that it's an unfair burden on those who own homes and own property. So there was a third proposal put forward. It was a bipartisan proposal in the Senate. It was put forward in the form of legislation as well. It was Senate Bill 6130. And within that legislation, it actually, again, was recognized that $3.5 billion is what's needed. And so I think that, in Olympia, we call that defining the box. We've defined the box. Now we have to get down to the brass tacks in terms of determining, where is that revenue going to come from, because that legislation didn't identify any specific revenue sources. So while I don't sit on the education committee, I'm absolutely committed to working with my colleagues in the legislature to find a final solution to this really tough issue. What I do want folks to know, though, is that what I'm going to fight to ensure is that whatever we ultimately decide is as fair and as equitable as possible, that we don't, whatever it is we decide, doesn't add to the regressive tax structure that we do have in this state.
So, but a very simplistic explanation, your preference would be a capital gains tax if we need to.
Just on the
Raise
wealthiest
What was the number
citizens.
it would hit?
The number of citizens?
Yeah.
7,500.
7,000.
And how much would that be designed to raise?
That would be designed to raise roughly $531 million in the first year and $1.2 billion the second year. So within a 2-year period, almost $2 billion. So obviously it wouldn't be the sole answer to the problem, but it goes a long way to getting there.
And Walter, you're talking about like a yearly incomes.
No, this was, the details are in the bill, and I can absolutely send you a copy of the bill. It was a 7% tax on stocks and investments.
So is this
For-
sort of net worth of the people?
It would be on their federal income tax returns. So I think that's all reported on your federal income
Yeah.
tax. So it would be based on that.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't have an income tax in this state.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
But it would be based on what they make from stocks. It wouldn't.
That's right.
be
And the first
the entire
500, the
income.
first $500,000, the first 500,000 per couple would be exempt. So it was anything over 500,000 and above. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Justin, what should we do about school funding?
School funding, from the research I've done, school funding doesn't seem to be an issue. It seems to be where the money's going. From the research I've done, the money for schools is actually increasing, the amount that's available. It's, from my understanding, the McClary decision is an unconstitutional one because the court has went outside their bounds and made a decision for the legislature. And from my understanding, you're not allowed to bind a future legislative session. And it looks like this does that, and it's also outside of the court's rule. So I find that to be an issue with the McClary decision. But for funding, it doesn't seem to be like there's much of an issue. It seems like education reform. Because from my research, it seems like too many non-teachers are being paid. There's a huge teachers union, and the teachers have to join this union. They have to pay their dues, and they have to be part of this union. Pretty much can't get out of it. And the principals, they're shackled. Principals can't have any oversight who gets hired, what kind of education's taught in their schools, and also they can't fire teachers if they are, well, from my understanding, if they're not in a charter school, they don't have much say. So I would unshackle the principals. Also, let's see here. Looks like there's been a 36% increase in school spending in the last 4 years, and that McClary decision, 20% of the verdict came from a brief from the unions. So the unions pretty much provided 20% of the judge's verdict for this McClary decision. One thing we could do is repeal RCW 41.59.110. This pretty much monopolizes the school system. We need to weaken the power of the teachers' union, I would say. Give power back to the people, to the parents. Allow their children to go to schools outside their zip code. Maybe more charter schools. Charter schools seem to be the best schools for our youth, and so freeing up some of this money that's already there seems to be a really good idea for me. And that's ways I would go before I would say anything about tax raises, because I've already made a promise. I will never vote to increase taxes my whole time as senator. So you guys can follow me, and I will stick true to my word. I don't make promises, I make commitments.
Thank you.
A bit of a philosophical question.
Yes, sir.
that I thought I'd ask this group, and we'll start with Justin. You're running as an independent, right?
I am, sir.
And we'll go down the line here, but what differentiates, I mean, look, we understand that everybody is different, and there's a bunch of wide ranges and nuances when you get into a particular party or group. Generally speaking, what differentiates you as an independent from a Republican?
Well, sir, I'm not part of the establishment. I'm not bound by their rules. You know, I don't care what their agenda is. I have my own agenda, and that's for the people. And I know that at the top, the Democrats and the Republicans are both controlled. I mean, you can see that Donald Trump is obviously the nominee, but the Republican Party wants to go away from that. You know, so I don't really like that. And I did speak out to the Republican branch before I ran, and I seen if they would support me. And they had they didn't want to support me. They didn't want to talk to me, return my calls. And I kind of thought about messing with people's minds and going Democrat, but independent's the way to go, because you know you're not part of the establishment, and people know that from the start.
But I mean, you've said that you think you should potentially weaken the teachers' union.
Yes, sir.
You talked about never raising taxes.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like a
Like a
conservative
Republican.
right?
Yeah, but it also sounds a lot more to me like a libertarian, because if I was to classify myself as anything, I'd be more libertarian. And because I'm against the drug war, I'm against a lot of things that the Republicans won't even step foot in.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm more of a classic liberal or libertarian-based person, but most people don't know what a libertarian is.
Last time, what did you run as?
I was, I didn't have to choose anything.
Right.
Oh,
City
okay,
council.
okay. Sorry.
But you would have probably run as a Republican the last time. If
well,
they would have had you.
I don't know. I'd be more inclined to be libertarian, but people don't even know what that is when you tell them. They say, I'm a libertarian. They say, what's
I got
that?
you. All right.
Vaughn, what distinguishes a Democrat from a Republican?
Ooh. Well, it's just basically it's just the stances on the many different issues. Like some
Well, give it to me.
socially, Democrats are a little more progressive than Republicans, and Republicans usually stick with a more traditional viewpoint. But as a progressive Democrat, we're looking to be as open to anyone's ideology, anyone's like personal beliefs, personal actions. So.
Well, but if we had to get into a little specifics, like, okay, I get the whole progressive thing.
Yeah.
But, so, who's more likely to raise taxes, Democrats or Republicans?
Democrats.
Okay.
Hold on.
And who's more likely to support abortion?
Support abortion. Democrats.
Okay. Do you have any other examples of specifics that you might think people could differentiate you on?
Well, in terms of maybe even the drug policy, like
Yeah.
Justin brought up, Republicans are more inclined to like stick with the war on drugs. It's believing that drugs are bad and illegal and everything, and Democrats are more inclined to believe that it's more of a health concern rather than a criminal activity.
And one more quick question before I move on to that. What differentiates you from that?
I feel like I'm outside of the bounds of like the establishment base, and
What does that mean?
like I'm a more progressive. I'm more left.
Could you give me an
And,
example of that?
I'm
You'd raise taxes more than an
no,
would?
no. It more socially left.
Well, what does
So,
that mean?
I-
I mean, give me an example.
When it comes to drug policy, I favor drug decriminalization completely,
Okay.
so that
Okay.
it can just put that to bed and
Okay.
move on.
Okay. Annette, what distinguishes a Republican from a Democrat?
I want to believe that all of us, Republicans, Democrats, whatever label you might attach to an individual, all of us want the same thing. I mean, we want the American dream of being able to succeed, regardless of
Different
where
ways
you
of
might
getting there.
start in your life. So from my perspective, I define the Democrats as folks who want to create opportunities for everyone and want to try to create a level playing field.
Does that suggest that Republicans don't want to create an opportunities for everyone?
I think Republicans maybe are less focused on the collective we, more focused on the individual I. That's how I would.
And who's more likely to
Define
raise
that.
taxes?
Democrats, due to the fact that they're looking at things in a more community
Yeah.
focused collective way.
And how would you distinguish yourself from Vaughn?
From Vaughn.
Yeah.
I've only just met Vaughn recently, but I believe that first and foremost, I'm the candidate that has the most extensive government affairs and public policy legislative experience. I clearly have a proven record now of legislative service over the course of the past 4 years. I've served in the minority in the state Senate, so I absolutely also understand the importance of reaching consensus and compromising.
But you wouldn't know issues that you would differ?
I don't.
I mean, you're kind of like a raving liberal, right? Would that be a fair description?
I can live with that.
Yeah, okay. So would you be a conservative compared to that guy?
No, I wouldn't call myself a conservative. I suppose
Compared.
more of a moderate, if you will, or
Okay.
more of a realist.
Okay. You're unrealistic, buddy, just in case you didn't catch on to that right away. Okay.
Actually, along those lines, I want to back up for a second. So you favor the decriminalization of all drugs.
Yes.
So Washington has legalized marijuana use, but you would be in favor of legalizing heroin and cocaine.
Not legalizing, decriminalizing. So
Decriminalizing.
the sale and manufacture would still be illegal
Mhm.
and still be penalized and prosecuted. But users would be offered a pathway to treatment and a pathway to getting clean. Because over the course of my lifetime, I've lost 11 friends to the heroin epidemic. So that's one issue that's really close to my heart. And so that's why I've taken the stance that the war on drugs has failed. And I don't believe the government should be getting into forcing people to live a life that they don't want to live. If they use, that's part of their liberty, to live the life as they choose. And by taking that away, it defeats principles in our Constitution and the Washington State Constitution. So putting that to rest would, bring back a lot more freedom to the people. Oh, excuse me, to the people, and basically establish that, you can use them, but now it's not illegal. So you
But
need
would
to.
that increase use?
No, actually, in the 3 places that have decriminalized drugs, Portugal, Italy, and Spain, they saw use and deaths both plummet while treatment rose. And then that gave a little more money in the healthcare industry, and then got healthier people working and gave a boost to their economy. So, in turn, it lowers usage because it stops a thrill in some people's minds of, I'm getting away with something. And also opens up a pathway that, I'm not going to get in trouble if I come forward and seek help. That, a lot of my friends, they had to get arrested in order to get treatment. And I don't think that should be a pathway to getting yourself clean of something that's really damaging you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the Interstate 5 bridge. what should we do? What's the next step? And would you favor an I-5 bridge, or would you prefer a third bridge across the Columbia? And we'll start with
And
Justin.
the priority, I'm just,
Yeah.
in other words, you may like all the bridges, but
What's your priority?
What's my
which
favorite
one comes
choice?
first?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's 5 keys that come to transportation. That's tie spending, respect freedom of mobility, deploy resources, improve freight mobility, and utilize public and private partnerships. Seems that we've had 128% highway increase in demand. So usually when the demand for highway increases, you need to increase the lanes, at least at some point down the road. So we've had a 28% increase, and we've only increased lane additions to about 72%. So we might need to expand our lanes out a little bit, but when you get down here into this I-5 corridor, it gets kind of tightened up. I have an idea that I've never heard anybody mention yet. Now, I'm thinking the double-decker lane system, where you can have lanes above other lanes, right, when we hit these crucial areas, and so we don't have to go outside and destroy all these buildings and take this property and do all this stuff. Maybe we can have the double-decker system. And I also was thinking with the I-5 bridge, instead of replacing it, why don't we just add an addition? That's what they did in like the 50s. One of those bridges is from like 1910, the other one's from like 1959. What if we put another one on each side, or one on one side? I think those are pretty good ideas. I mean, the bridges, that one bridge is 100 years old, and the other one's like 50-some years old. They're built quite well.
And so you would prefer addressing I-5 before a third bridge, either an east side bridge or
Well,
a west side bridge?
Yeah, I would address the lane type issue, because I think that's a lot of the issue is there's not enough lanes, and yeah, it's terrible. I don't like it either. And
Isn't
I'm
part of the
brainstorming.
problem, though, if we add more lanes, then they have nowhere to go once they get across the bridge? Wouldn't we need to add lanes further down the road?
Further down the road into Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or up here.
Yeah, I would think so. I haven't I haven't got to the drawing board and actually drawn it, but I was just thinking, what if we had lanes above lanes? Now, that's just kind of a cool idea. And now I wouldn't think maybe all the way down, but maybe in the future, maybe that would be the case. I don't have an answer to your last
No,
statement.
that's fine. That's fair enough. Annette, what would we do on the bridge?
Yeah. Well, as you well know, when I was elected and went into the legislature in 2013, I worked very, very hard to try to move forward on replacing the I-5 bridge, and was a supporter of the now defunct Columbia River crossing. I fought hard for the Columbia River crossing because I knew that if that project were to die, that it would in fact doom our community to at least another 5 to 10 years of not having an answer to our safety issues, our reliability issues, our congestion issues. And in fact, that is what we're now grappling with, is the fact that we have increased gridlock and congestion, reliability, safety issues on that bridge. I did everything in my power to try to find a path forward, including introducing a bill in 2015 that would have included within the transportation revenue package that we ultimately passed a bridge, mediated actually, bridge work group to have been funded by that revenue package that would have brought stakeholders
Why do you think
back
that
together.
hasn't gained any traction?
It didn't gain traction at the time, and because I believe that it was really ideology that killed the bridge project as we knew it. What the ideologues really are so opposed to
Like
is
who?
transit, is light rail.
Who are the
And,
ideologues?
well, Senator Don Benton's always been a very vocal, opposer of the bridge. But unfortunately, when we had a chance to actually have some substantive negotiation, at a time when we still had an opportunity to come through with some sort of solution and an actual bridge that would begin construction and be built, there was refusal to even talk, and that's a real shame, and it's
So where do we go
a tragedy
from here?
for our community. Well, I think where we go from here is asking the question that Lou touched on a moment ago. I think first and foremost we have to determine, do we have a common goal? Do we all share as our common goal the fact that the I-5 bridge replacement should be first, should be the priority, should be the issue that we work on? Once we have determined that we do share that common goal, then I think we need to come together and determine what's the process we can all support, and what's the timeline that we will agree to and support all the way from beginning to end, so that we don't have ever again another project that's been worked on for over a decade and then it fails in the final hour at the last step.
So if we don't all share a common goal, then it's going to go nowhere.
It's going to be very, very difficult to move forward. There will, I think we also have to remember, consensus isn't 100% agreement. There will always be.
So we wouldn't all share a common goal.
Let me clarify. I think those leaders who have the responsibility of moving forward our community do have to share that common goal. I think that our elected officials from the local level and state level and federal level, yes, absolutely have to get behind that as a common goal.
Thank you. And,
Yeah,
Vaughn,
yeah.
what do we do on
And can I just add one more thing?
Oh,
I
I'm
want
sorry.
to just also add that any path we start down to begin anew, I think we also have to answer the question for the public: what's different this time? What's different? So
And it has to be different.
it has to be different. That's right.
Vaughn?
Well, I kind of want to pull ideas from both of you guys. I've actually spoken with my campaign staff about a double-decker system
Oh,
as
wow.
well. And I've talked about it with my family for years. And also, how many of you guys have ever done the tour at Fort Vancouver? Yeah. Well, remember when I was little, I saw a picture in there, and it was from World War I when they were building ships and whatever. I don't remember exactly what, but in the background, you see the same bridge that's there today, and they're driving little Fords across. So I feel like it's about time we need to revamp our entire infrastructure, and that's something I'm in agreement with you on, that we need to move forward with getting a new bridge and getting rid of the old, and also creating a way for public transit, mass transit, to move freely, so then people who live over here and work over there can get over there quickly and get going with their day, be more productive, and also lower emissions and help out the environment in the process. And it's really, I feel like there's been kind of a breakdown in much of the communication in many of the politicians in this area, with Don Benton and yourself. And I feel like needs to, instead of trying to reach a common goal, try to find a common goal that's right there, and sit down and talk about the benefits, the pros, the cons, and show why our idea is better. And instead of just sticking with the status quo.
Thank you.
Okay, how sure are you guys of winning? On a 0 to 100%, 0 meaning you got no shot, and 100% meaning what else? How confident are you, 0 to 100%?
I'm 110% confident, but I do not have $96,000 worth of funding like my opponent, Annette Cleveland. But I do think that I can do it without very much.
You're 110% confident you'll win?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm not entirely confident.
Give me a percentage.
However,
Give me that percentage.
okay, percentage.
Work on it.
80. I'll
80%
give
you're
you
going to win.
give you an
That's
Eddie.
not bad for a relatively young guy who hasn't been around the block.
I got a
80%?
drive inside me.
Yeah, okay.
People
That's a
don't.
good thing. That's a
Can
good
you
thing.
beat 80%?
I can.
What do you think? What's the percentage?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, well, we got a lot of confident people here. That's always good to know. But, you know, somebody just,
Somebody's
you know,
gotta go.
a little advanced. Somebody's wrong here. I'm just letting you know right out of the box that somebody's...
We're all
Might be
good.
two of us.
We're all good people here.
Definitely two of you. Definitely two of you are going to be wrong. Okay, on the record.
So who would each of you consider to be your role model in the legislature? Justin, we'll start with that.
In United States or Washington?
Washington.
I don't have any role models here in Washington. I think David Medore, pretty honorable dude. I like him. Spoke with him a couple times. He's kind of a busy guy, but I'd say I like Medore. He's pretty cool. But I don't have any role models. I'm a maverick rogue on my own
You
course.
think Medore's kind of a maverick too, maybe?
You know, he urges citizens to take a what do you call it, a
Oh, yeah, the radiation thing.
yeah, to the store because a little girl found radiation in salmon at just the regular supermarket. I think that's a great idea. I think we need people who really care about others, and Medore seems like he does.
Okay. Don't say Annette. Just say it. That'd be a
No,
definite.
I'd say honestly, I'd say Royce Pollard, former mayor. I got a chance to meet with him many times as a kid through different Little League. He gave me the Vancouver Sparkles Award. So, I don't know. He's just always been a very respectable man, and I've just always admired him.
Okay.
He's a great man.
U.S. Senator Patty Murray has been my mentor and someone I look up to greatly. I worked for her first term in the U.S. Senate, and obviously she served in the Washington State Senate before she moved on to the U.S. Senate, and we've stayed in close contact, and I very much value her guidance, her advice, her perspective.
I want to go back just for a second, back to transportation, because I neglected to ask. Light rail, just yes or no, quick answer. Justin?
I don't think it's unreasonable that it's ready for light rail. I
But
mean,
not right now.
yeah, I think not right now that people are speaking, but I mean, it would be really foolish for us to build a bridge and then decide light rail is something we need and not be able to do it or need to build a new bridge entirely.
Sure. Vaughn?
I'm in favor of it, yes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think starting over, we have to have an open mind and consider alternatives, including do nothing, which is the alternative we've apparently currently chosen. But that being said, yes, I support light rail. I believe that we need to be looking to the future, and whatever it is we do decide to build needs to meet the needs of our next generation. I have a daughter who's college age. She prefers transit. When she comes home on breaks from school, she goes to the park and ride and takes the express bus. She's not all that enamored with having to drive a car everywhere. And I know that many of her friends don't even have driver's licenses. And so I want to ensure that whatever we do ultimately decide when it comes to replacing the I-5 bridge, that we've taken into account what it is that the next generation really wants and needs.
What are your thoughts about climate change? Should the state government deal with that, and will you vote for I-732? Start with Vaughn.
Which one is I-732?
That's the carbon tax.
Oh,
Deal with carbon
okay.
tax.
Yes, I'd agree with that, yes. But when it comes to climate change, that's one that I've fought for since I've been an activist on since I was 10. Just recently I sat on the railroad tracks to fight against the oil trains. And I believe it's one of the biggest issues
Isn't that
facing.
dangerous?
Huh?
Isn't that dangerous?
What, sitting on the
Sitting
track?
on railroad tracks?
Yeah. But if you can't fight for what you believe in, then your whole ideology's
You
for
wouldn't,
not.
you wouldn't recommend that to other kids, would you?
Define kid.
Somebody a year younger than you.
You're younger than me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're adults. They can get out there and fight for what you believe in.
Did sitting on the
And-
railroad tracks accomplish your goal?
Yes, it got.
Was
it
there
got,
a change?
Got quite a
That
bit.
came about?
Well, it got quite a bit of attention drawn to the issue, and got more people looking for ways they can get involved and move forward in getting legislation to help end the climate crisis that we're in. And one of my platform pieces is moving to 100% renewable energy by 2030. And that's also on the Green Party platform, as I'm a member of them as well here in this community. And just always need to do our work to protect our planet. That's a very high priority for me.
Annette, your thoughts on 732?
Yeah. 732 I have some concerns with. It's revenue neutral. It actually makes some tweaks to our already existing taxes.
It would reduce the sales tax.
Yes. So while I absolutely believe that we have to begin to implement policies that will address climate change and will address carbon issues, I would prefer that we look at the much broader picture, and obviously that particular initiative would gravely impact our PUD here in Southwest Washington, Clark County, and so I think we have to look, rather than make grave changes that don't result in much benefit, that we look at this in a holistic way. Maybe
Are
come
you
up with
voting
a
for it or
series of
against it?
policies. This particular initiative, I'll be voting no.
Justin?
I'm going to vote no. I think the whole climate change thing is a big scam on the people, to tax people for living their lives. Last time I checked, CO2, carbon, is a building block of life. So I would say the government has been involved in manipulating our weather since the 30s. I have a packet right here that talks about it, 1996 manual the Air Force provided. There's a 1978 Senate report that talks about how the government has been modifying and changing our weather for years, and they do it for strategic reasons, for like war type scenarios with other countries. I'd be really surprised if the drought in California wasn't related to cloud seeding, and so I think investigating geoengineering and its effect on Washington State, our agriculture, our economy, and the health of our people comes first, and I'd have to vote no on this tax, and I think it's unnecessary.
We talked about a few large issues here, obviously. Climate change, Wi-Fi bridge, education. If there was something on your wish list that was way off the radar screen, in other words, not a big issue, something small, but something that interested you, that you'd like to get passed by the legislature this year, what would that be? Annette, do you have something that's not a big deal, but something that's important to you?
Oh, I have a number of them.
Only get one.
I would like to pass the elder justice bill that I've prime sponsored. We're fortunate here in Clark County to have an elder justice center, but I believe that elder abuse is a real problem. I think part of the issue is we don't have a true definition. And so I would like to pass a bill that would put greater resources toward prevention education and helping to prosecute elder abuse.
Vaughn, you got a sort of a little bit off the radar.
Well, definitely my stance on drug decriminalization. That's very off the radar in terms of where people have been taking stances on the issue. But with Clark County's heroin use tripling since 2000 and deaths just keep going up, and my personal experience with it, being an addict and having 11 friends die, really shocked that passion into me.
Okay. Justin?
Yes, sir. I would like to produce or propose legislation to help in homelessness within the state, not just locally. I think the state can provide some land for our homeless, and I believe we can provide a number of housing ideas on this property. And I think we can also, because we're giving them a place to live, I think we should initiate the statewide work crew program that gives anybody a place to work, minimum wage, because I think that's the hardest thing that homeless have, finding a job and finding a home. I mean, you got to have first, last, deposit, good references, good credit, no criminal to get a house. Jobs just about the same way. I have plenty of experience, life and personal working, and I can't even really get a job somewhere. I can't even deliver pizzas for Domino's, so I could just feel for the homeless. I know what they're going through. I think a statewide work crew program gives them money. We give them land and a house. They put that money back into the economy.
We'll move on then. Give us your final pitch, why voters should support you, and please mention any notable endorsements you would like to bring up.
Okay.
Start with Justin.
Yes, sir. Well, I think Vancouver Clark County residents should vote for me for 49th District Senate. I am something new. I'm uncontrolled and possibly uncontrollable, and I'm a wild card, much like Donald Trump. And I think that I think that's what the people want. People want a leader. People want somebody that's going to step up, and they don't care if they sound stupid or sound like a fool. They're going by what they feel is right, and those are my intentions. I have a lot of ideas for legislation. I want to help get veterans basically able to use their VA benefits at any medical facility here in Washington. I'd like to create better education reform. I want to help out the homeless. I've got lots of experience as a leader. I was commander of my boot camp at 15. I was a manager of a satellite corporation at 19, and I seem to always find myself in the leadership role. And people have that feeling about me, like I can, I can grab the reins and I can lead this ship, And I think we need to stir this ship around. Thank you.
And what are you presently doing for work?
I'm going to school part-time, right? And I'm also vice president of the Broken Pole Fishing Hole for Wounded Vets. That's a retreat in Woodland.
I remember that from the last time.
Yeah, and it's our founder, James Bond, and I help him with that. And that's all volunteer. I don't get paid, so what I do is I just scrape by with the money I get from school, and I try to feed my cat. That's my number one goal every day.
Thank you. Vaughn, give us your final pitch.
Alrighty. Well, as a person, I feel I'm most like my great-grandfather. He was a journalist, did law enforcement, and he was an educator. My great-grandma always called him a jack of all trades, master of some, and that's how I feel I am. Because already at 19, I've had many different life experiences through friends, through family, and through me personally. Being a part of the LGBT community, living through the heroin epidemic, and just my all-out drive for activism and always pushing people to become involved. And my platform goes with that in bringing people together, bringing a unity back into our community, and moving towards 100% renewable energy, moving towards single-payer method of healthcare, moving towards automatic voter registration, drug decriminalization, and investing in infrastructure so that we can lift people up instead of holding them down.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, did either of you have endorsements?
Oh, yes. Endorsements. I've received one from a state representative candidate, Caitlin Beck, and governor candidate, Pat O'Rourke, as well as 2 small business owners, owners of Zen Clean Home and owner of Papa Crackers Crispy Crust Pizza, as well as educators at Clark College, one being Dr. Sally Keeley, professor of mathematics and in the STEM division, and as well as a writer, a local writer who is internationally published, close friend of mine, David Jones.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, I haven't went out seeking endorsements, but I do have an endorsement from the Broken Pole Fishing Hole for wounded vets, and that one stands. And I just forgot one thing. I also want to get body cameras on police officers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice. Yes.
Great.
And Annette?
Well, for the last 4 years, I've worked really hard to try to advocate for priorities that I think that we all share, including job creation, education, transportation infrastructure, affordable health care, and housing. But I also think that we live in pretty complicated political times, and it's more important than ever, in my opinion, that we elect people who have an understanding of the legislative process, background in public policy. And I am the candidate that brings that to the table. I think also, more importantly, we need to look at the people that we're electing to ensure that they have the skills that it takes to be a good legislator, and that includes being able to compromise, being able to problem solve, being able to find consensus, and I'm the only candidate that's had the opportunity to demonstrate those skills and my background and experience in the legislature these last 4 years. I've also been really humbled, even though being a freshman senator, in my first term, I've been recognized for my work. I received the Golden Crayon Award from the Early Learning Action Alliance for my work on education issues and specifically early learning issues. I was named the 2015 Statesman of the Year by the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. I was named the 2015 Legislator of the Year by the Southwest Washington Labor Roundtable. And just last week, I was recognized by the Association of Washington Cities and named one of their legislative champions. So, I want to continue the work that I've begun representing the 49th Legislative District. I want to work with all of you and with the people of the district to tackle head-on these big challenges that we face. And I ask today for your endorsement, and I thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, any endorsements?
Yes, and in fact, I brought along a list for you. It's not all-inclusive, but it'll give you a sense. I'm really pleased. U.S. Senator Patty Murray's endorsed me, Congressman Denny Heck, former State Senator Al Bauer, former State Senator Craig Pridemore, Washington State Labor Council, Sierra Club of Washington, WACOPS. So I'll leave these with you so that you have a little better sense of my endorsements.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
definitely.